Welcome back to another episode of Ignite Agility. Today, I want to share with you a question I got last week from one of our graduates. And when those things happen, I always think about it and wonder, would others in our followers or graduates of ours or clients of ours wonder the same thing? So I'm going to share it with you. But before I move on, please like and subscribe or leave us a comment below. And hey, if there's other topics you want us to talk about, let us know and we'd be happy to do that. So here's the question I got. The student was here physically in person. I know, crazy, right? We're doing an in-person certified large-scale Scrum practitioner workshop. Craig Larman, who's one of the co-creators of that method, comes to the United States at least once a year and usually holds those in Minneapolis at our center. And so a lot of our graduates who have become advanced Scrum Masters or certified Scrum professionals love to come and have that experience as the next step in their journey. And one of the things Craig, who was at the very forefront of the Agile movement, he loves sharing the history with people. And as a fellow educator, he's very clear about things that are Scrum and that are not Scrum. Now, in collaborative leadership team classes, we are too, but sometimes I feel like our classes are turning more into mythbusters because of all the nonsense and misuse of practices that is so prevalent in the world of work today, that it's a little bit of a shock to someone's system. And they don't either fully hear the message or they go back to the company that they're working at and practice becomes permanent, right? Those anti-patterns that they've been a part of just, keep perpetuating and they forget everything that they heard in our workshop or a fair amount of the things they heard in our workshop because it is use it or lose it. So we were on a break and chit-chatting around the island in the kitchen, because that's where everybody gathers, right, is in the kitchen. And our graduate said, Craig just mentioned story points are not part of Scrum. I said, that is correct. They are not. They did not originate in Scrum. And the question then came to me, well, why do you teach it in your workshops? They said. And I said, I have a bunch of reasons I can give you. And the workshop you attended, you may or may not remember, there was a big disclaimer right in the material that says story points are not part of Scrum. They come from a different Agile method called extreme programming. And according to our Scrum guide, it's the developers who get to choose what sizing method they use. She's like, yeah, but you took us through it. And I'm like, yes, I did. And number one is because I would be doing a disservice to my graduates if I sent you back into the world empty-handed. And we are pummeled with feedback from people. How come you didn't teach story points? Story points aren't part of Scrum. Jira thinks it is. My boss thinks it is. Fill in the blank, right? And so that is true. No certified Scrum trainer with the Scrum Alliance is contractually obligated to teach any of you story points. I cannot speak for why some trainers do or don't cover those topics. I can only speak for myself. And yes, we have another certified Scrum trainer, Christian Antoine, here at Collaborative Leadership Team. I'm not even going to try to speak for him. He has his own reasons. But my first and foremost reason is that it would be a disservice to my students. So as bonus content in all of our workshops, certified Scrum developer, certified Scrum product owner, certified Scrum master, we cover it. And I am very clear that I'm doing it because I feel it's a disservice to our graduates to send you out into the world of work completely empty-handed, because you are inevitably going to run into this. And I do pride myself on teaching you kind of the by the book stuff, but I'm also a very practical person, a very pragmatic coach. And so I do want people to have those things in their bag of tricks, but I do give the warning that it is not core Scrum. It is from extreme programming, and I teach it as intended. I do not teach the made up nonsense or the dysfunctions or the misuse that I know are going on in companies out there in the world of work, in the hopes that my graduates leave with some tips and tricks to get things back on track in their own environments. But I also teach an alternative method as a bonus. I teach t-shirt sizing, and I'm a big, big fan of t-shirt sizing. And I will tell you, I've only been doing this for 20 years. So who knows? There could be new dysfunctions yet that pop up. But in the 20 years I've been working with Agile and Scrum so far, the dysfunctions I see with story points are not new. I have seen the same misuse, the same myths, the same anti patterns over and over and over again. I've yet to encounter a new one. And so I have worked through all of that so I can help people recover from all of that. And I do that as bonus content. But I'm very clear, just like Craig was in his workshop, this is not core Scrum. Your developers could choose any sizing method they want. Because if you don't let them choose a sizing method, you're disempowering them, which is yet a different dysfunction. So I'm a big fan of something like the t-shirt sizes, because when I have taught teams, as well as Scrum Masters and their product owner, t-shirt sizing, I don't see the dysfunctions that I do see when story points are involved. I think there's something about the fact that story points uses numbers to convey effort, risk, complexity, uncertainty. And that number, I think, gives people a little post-traumatic stress. They see a number and they have, mental flashbacks to being told they had to guess in hours. And then their guesses were held as commitments. Well, no human is going to guess, right? I mean, if you were good at guessing right, you wouldn't have to work for a living. Especially if you're talking about numbers, you would have won the lottery. Oh my goodness! So the t-shirt sizing is something that I'm a big fan of, because sizing goes faster, and you don't see the dysfunctions. And it's a myth that you can't build forecasts and plan when you're using t-shirt sizes. That's just not true. And we do cover that in our workshops and our on-demand material and things like that. The other thing, when I say teams really can, choose whatever sizing method they want, I do share a couple of stories I have of teams making up their own scale. One of them is zoo animals. And I love that the team did that. It definitely kept the micromanagers out of their business, because if your micromanagers are wanting to know what points equal or what t-shirts equal, oh my gosh, they have too much time on their hands. Hopefully, the leaders at your company, hopefully the managers at your company care about delivering working product and how they can help bust impediments to the team's ability to delivering value. That's what they should care about, not story points. So I love that they did that, because it got the micromanagers to stop asking and to put their attention where it belongs. So I love it when teams are empowered and do things like that. So that's the first reason. I just feel like it's a disservice. I'd be sending you out into the world empty-handed, and I want to give people practical advice on how to use those things. But I do, much like Craig did, I do give that big disclaimer. This is not core Scrum. It isn't. It's just bonus. It's just bonus material. The second reason I am passionate about continuing to try to teach story points, t-shirt sizing, to fill somebody's bag of tricks in my classes, isn't just the bonus, but it's also, as an educator, I pride myself on helping people become knowledgeable. One of my favorite authors is Edwards Deming. Some of you may have heard of him or his work, that he did at Toyota. The book that really helped me when I was a newer consultant is his book called Out of the Crisis. And one of my favorite Edwards Deming phrases is copying without knowledge. It was his critique on the United States and what was happening at the time when the United States was rushing to copy Toyota's success. And he said, you are copying without knowledge. You aren't getting knowledgeable about what they're actually doing. What structure changes did they make? What policy changes did they make? What behavior changes did their people make? You're not getting knowledgeable. So, how will you know what you're copying will work for you? It just really has stayed with me my entire consulting career, my entire Scrum Mastery and coaching career. And what I see in the Agile community is the copying without knowledge all over again. It's happening all over again. People aren't bothering to get knowledgeable, they aren't bothering to read original sources and own their own ideas. They just hear it from water cooler talk or Slack channels or a tool like Jira, Azure DevOps, Rally. It's like, what? Are you working for the tool or is the tool working for you? It just seems like common sense has taken a permanent vacation here in some aspects. So as an educator, I pride myself on people leaving our workshops at this company at Collaborative Leadership Team knowledgeable. Now, what they do with that newfound knowledge is up to them. They could go back to work and just slip back into the status quo, or they could go back to work and say, hey, I learned a couple things at this workshop I went to. I I learned a couple things on this recording that this person Angela Johnson put out there called How to Do Better Scrum, How to Do Even Better Scrum. And I went through her story point module. Oh my gosh, we could become so much more effective. We could become so much more efficient if we stopped doing a couple of these anti patterns. If we started using some of these methods as intended. One of the worst things to do is to say to your peers, we're doing it all wrong. Don't do that. That just makes people defensive, right? Nobody likes to hear that. That just makes people defensive. So if you took an approach of education, right? I'm an educator. That's the second reason I want to share all this stuff with you. I want to help you get knowledgeable. So if you do check out our content or our classes, the on-demand is probably the easiest and the most cost-effective way to do it. And we'll drop it in the chat below. But saying to your peers, hey, I learned something. Can I share that with you? It might help us. Well, now they might be open to listening versus if you say, we're doing it all wrong. That just makes people totally defensive. Yeah. So thank you for listening. I just wanted to share the why the heck do you teach story points in your classes if it isn't part of Core Scrum? So gave you my 2 reasons. Thanks for checking it out. And don't forget to check out the links below.